evening, viewers, and welcome to the Art with World. I am your host, Arshad Wahid. Turkey and Pakistan have been long connected through shared history and culture. Today, we are talking of two great poets of Turkey and Pakistan, Nazım Hikmet and Faiz. With me today is Dr. Sibel Behram, who is Associate Professor of Language and Literature at Duce University, Turkey. She has been working in Pakistan as head of Department of Turkish Language in Namal University, Islamabad, and she fairly understands Pakistani literary scene as well. Welcome to our show, Dr. Sibel. How are you?
Thank you so much, and thank you for invitation. And I am really so happy to be here today with you, and it is pleasure for me.
So we are talking of two different poets who lived in two different countries, and if we remember, earlier 20th century was a very interesting time in history. It was very turbulent, but it was witnessing so many changes around the world. It was a time of national liberation movements for social justice, a socialist dream, and many a poet contributed into that. And we find a lot of similarity between two writers of these two countries. Nazım Hikmet, he was from Turkey. He also lived in exile. He was incarcerated for quite many years, and still he had a hope for revolution, for justice, for a different world where people would have equal economic opportunities. Similarly, Faiz, who was here in Pakistan, he was brought up in the times when there were British rulers in Pakistan, in United British India at that time. But he also had the dream of revolution, social justice, and peace in this country and around the world. He was also incarcerated. He also spent some years in exile, and he was also with the struggle of working class in Pakistan. So this is the reason we are talking about these two poets. I understand you live in Pakistan and you have fair understanding of Pakistani literary scene, and still because Nazım Hikmet was from Turkey, and I understand you are also fond of his poetry. So I would talk something about Faiz as much as I know about his life, his literature, his style, and his themes. And I would like to hear from you about Nazım Hikmet, same things, his life, his style, his technique, and the themes which made his poetry. So maybe we could start from there, and I would like to hear from you about Nazım Hikmet.
Thank you. Yes, as you say, 20th century is interesting century because many things happened. And first World War happened, many empires were collapsed, economic crisis happened, and also imperialism, of course, colonialism, and injustice, and that situation was so pessimistic at that time. And this in Soviet, this communist ideology actually bring new hopes to young people, especially young intellectual people like Ahmed Faiz and Nazım Hikmet. And that's why there are these young intellectual people, they thought through this new ideology, maybe it can be established new world for people and can bring equality. When we look at Nazım Hikmet, Nazım Hikmet was born in 1920 in Selanik city. Selanik city now is in Greece, but at that time it was part of Ottoman Empire. And also Nazım Hikmet family was quite educated family, especially his grandfather, for example, he was governor of in Ottoman Empire. And his father also was educated. His mother is a famous painter, Mam Celile, also. That's why he was really lucky, and he grown up in such atmosphere, and he learned many languages and West literature, Eastern literature also. Especially in beginning already, he was affected by Ottoman poetry so much, folk literature also. Then after that, Nazım Hikmet also joined Army College as well, but because of some health reason, he left that college, and after that he went to Soviet. Actually, that is so much important in his life because when he went to Soviet for studying university, and his opinion and totally has changed. Then he got no communist ideology, and after that his poetry, his ideology, his lifestyle also was affected so much by that ideology. When he come back to Turkey, at that time Republic of Turkey was established, and but of course he did propaganda of his own ideology in his poems, and then he was arrested. Also, he was so young, by the way, just 20 years old, and after that, and just a few years, he was in prison. Then he come out from prison. Then again, he went to Soviet and stayed sometimes from that. Then after that, again he come back to Turkey, but he didn't give up. He struggled, keep to struggle every way. And again, he was arrested. Then around 13 years, he was in prison and long time. Even actually, he normally he would stay 28 years in prison, but amnesty law happened, and that's why he got freedom. But when he got freedom already, he was around 51 years old. And then he couldn't feel safe in Turkey at that time. That's why he did exile and he went to Poland, because also his grandmother comes origin was Polish actually. That's why he got citizenship, Polish citizenship at that time. Then from there he went to Moscow, and until he died, he stayed in Moscow, and his graveyard also still is in Moscow.
This is a very eventful life he spent. He was very active in his struggle as well, and he was equally passionate about his poetry. And his poetry was just not propaganda, but it was full of aesthetics, style, and he almost broke away from classical traditions. Faiz also spent kind of similar life, but there might be some differences as well. He also was he was born in Sialkot in early 20th century, and then he studied in Government College, Lahore, and then he started teaching as well. Most of his poetry is symbolic of dreams of the young people of those times, those who wanted to live in a free world, those who wanted to have independence, those who had dreams attached with the independence, they wanted social justice. And like Nazım Hikmet, his dreams or his themes were not just localized in Pakistani soil, but those were universal. The dream of social justice was universal for all people. So he wrote about the people of the other world as well, like one of his poem in the name of Iranian students, and then he also wrote about other revolutionary poets as well. Similarly, he actually translated Nazım Hikmet's poems as well. One or two poems I still remember. Those were just appealing, and that is how I came to know about Nazım Hikmet and his poetry. One was, as you just told, that he was in prison for many years, but even in prison, he wrote very beautiful poetry. Like one of his poems, which Faiz translated, says that this is a letter to his beloved, that even if in the prison, I dream about you, I think about the beauty in the world, and I want to spend so much time with you, but still, because I'm also doing a revolutionary struggle, I still want to allocate as much time to my personal life and personal dreams so that it could not affect my struggle. So that is what Nazım Hikmet was. He was on the roads, on the streets with workers, with labor and trade unions, but also writing poetry for his country, for his people, and also his romantic poetry. So, can you just tell me about some of his poems he wrote from prison? Because you just mentioned, I think he spent maybe 13 or more than 13, 17 years in the prison.
Yes, that poem you mentioned shows, in spite of so pessimistic situation, but still he doesn't give up struggling, and also still he is so hopeful. And that poem you say, ne güzel şey hatırlamak seni, ölüm ve zafer haberleri içinde hapiste ve yaşı 40'ı geçmiş iken. In English, how beautiful it's to remember you amidst news of death and victory in prison and past the age of 40. How beautiful it's to remember you, your hand forgotten on a piece of blue cloth, and in your hair the solemn softness of my beloved Istanbul soul. To love you is in happiness, like a second soul within me, and like goes on.
Beautiful. Faiz also wrote poetry from prison. Actually, I think his one or two poetry editions are the poems he wrote from jail.
Yes,
I think if I'm not wrong, it was Montgomery Jail, Sahiwal, which
yes,
is called now. And there were letters he wrote to his wife. Maybe those were also from prison. And it's also beautiful poetry, and it tells about that there are a lot of these are not good times. There is depression all around, but still we are having a red hot passion for our dream, which we want to come true. It's beautiful poem. चांद के पेचो हम सितारों से जीना जीना उतर रही है रात. मतलब he's telling about a night when the night end, but he also says at the end of it that you have you have put out the flames of meeting with the beloved, jalwa gahe visal ki shame, but you cannot put out the light of which is coming from the moon. So you can suppress us to some extent, but you cannot eliminate beauty from the world altogether. So this is kind of poetry. I'm just telling the gist of his poem. It's not exact translation of that. So this also is shared between these poets. They were in prison, but they shared common dream of justice across the world. And then there's also
there is another poem again. Nazım wrote in prison. He was in prison, or he wrote about beloved again. That is also so beautiful, and also about hope, and also about what is his expectation. For example, he says, "Thinking of you is pretty and hopeful. It is like listening to the most beautiful song from the most beautiful voice on earth. But hope is not enough for me anymore. I don't want to listen to songs anymore. I want to sing." This is also so nice poem.
wow, beautiful. And then you also told, and we also have read that he had spent last years of his life in exile. Rather, he
Yes.
died in Moscow, and his citizenship was revoked from Turkey government at that time. So he wrote about exile as well, and Faiz also wrote about exile. He was in exile in Lebanon, and he was publishing. He was editor of Lotus magazine over there in Lebanon, and he had very close relationship with Palestinian leadership at that time. One of his collection is Mere Dil Mere Musafir, and Oh my heart and my traveler, in which he tells about the pains what a person experiences when he is in exile, to go wander around here and there, being unknown in alien lands, and that is what his poem is. And there are many other poems in which he tells that ख्याल सूए रतन रवां हैं समंदरों की अयाल था में हज़ार वहमो गुमा तुमान. So that means that his thoughts, even if he is living abroad, even if he is living in exile, his thoughts are still attached to his homeland. It's crossing the oceans, but his imagination is moving around in his own homeland. One of his poems, one of Nazim Hikmat's poem, which was translated by Faiz,
Yes.
O my home, O mere watan, in Urdu he translated it. It's a beautiful poem. So if you could just recite that for us, a few lines in
Yes.
Turkish, and then in English translation. Yes.
This is homeland, actually the biggest theme of Nazım, because he has love, so much passion, but his love is not just for beloved. His love for homeland, for beloved, for his ideology, for life, and he had passion for everything in life. One of that, of course, the biggest one, and that was homeland, about homeland. When even he was exiled, and he kept to write about Turkey. And also, for example, his one of books about independence war in Turkey, Legend of Kuvayi Milliye, for example. In Legend of Kuvayi Milliye, he just told, about people were, struggle for independence and for, homeland, and also that was also like revolution, according to Nazım, because at that time, there was no anything as in Turkey. After empire already, it was so poor country, and there were so many countries, they already want to get lands. And about that struggling, he wrote Legend of Kuvayi Milliye, and that is also important books. And also another his books, Human Lands from My Homeland. Again, in that also he talks about different variety of people. For example, factory worker and villager, and or usual people like this. This is also, of course, that was so new at that time in Turkish poetry, mention daily life and their about life, for example, about their problems. And but he, because of exile, last 10 years, he was, far away from Turkey. And there is one of his poem you mentioned that is really so lyric and so emotional. In Turkish, he says, memleketim, memleketim, memleketim. Ne kasketim kaldı senin oraya işi, ne yolların taşımış ayakkabım. Son mintanın da sırtımda paralandı çoktan. Şile bezinden de. Sen şimdi yalnız saçımın akında, el farkında yüreğimin, alnımın çizgilerindesin memleketim. Memleketim, memleketim. This is in Turkish, and you may recognize it is really so lyric. In English, my homeland, my homeland, my homeland. I have neither a cup from there, nor a shoe that I walk your ways that I bought from there. My last shirt is already wrapped on my back. It was made of gauze. Now you are just in the whites of my hair, and you are in the infraction of my heart. You are in my wrinkles on my forehead, my homeland, my homeland, my homeland.
Beautiful. And Faiz also translated it in very lyrical way. ओ मेरे वतन मेरे सर पर वो टोपी न रही जो तेरी ज़मीन से लाया था. So we have talked about his life, his struggle, his prison, his exile, and also we have talked about Faiz Ahmed Faiz. So just for our viewers, something about his personal life. How was that? If you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. Actually, also he has one poem, and title of poem, Autobiography. He wrote about his biography. And just one piece from there. He says, I was born in 1920. I never once went back to my birthplace. I don't like to turn back. At 3, I served as a Pasha's grandson Aleppo. At 19, as a student at Moscow Communist University. At 49, I was back in Moscow. And I have been a poet since I was 14. Some people know all about plants, some about fish. I know separation. Some people know the names of stars by heart. I recite absences. I have slept in prisons and in grand hotels. I think this is maybe some summary of his life because his life really was, unusual and also so many adventures, maybe we should say. His personal life, and of course, he liked to have love always. And there were so many women in his life. And all these women always was the biggest inspiration of his poetry. And for example, he got married with Piraye, and that was big love between them. And there are so many poems about Piraye. Then after that, again, he divorced and he got married with another woman, Munawar. Again, there are so many poems about Munawar, so much passion. And then when he was exiled, then again he left Munawar. Then he met with Vera. That was his last love in his life in Russia. Vera was original Russian, and for her also he wrote so many poems. One of them, the really so beautiful, and also before their marriage, and already Nazım was, has heart problem, and they said doctor advised him, he should not have any adventures. He should have calm life, otherwise he will die early. But he didn't listen to doctors. Then he got married with Vera, and after 3 years, and he, 1930, 63, he died. But as I said, there are so many poems for Vera as well. One of them is really so loud, and he says, "Gelsene dedi bana, kalsana dedi bana, gülsene dedi bana, ölsene dedi bana. Geldim, kaldım, güldüm, öldüm." In English, she said, "Come to me." She said, "Stay to me." She said, "Smile to me." She said, "Die to me." I came, I stayed, I smiled, I died. I think this line already shows his personal life.
Yeah, this is beautiful expression of love, and I mean,
There is
popular
another,
saying is, yeah, please.
there is another poems about love that is also really so nice. Title of poem, Tahir ile Zühre. Tahir Zühre is one of the biggest love story in folk literature, like Leyla Mecnun. And he says, Tahir olmak da ayıp değil, Zühre olmak da. Hatta sevda yüzünden ölmek de ayıp değil. In English, it is not a shame to be a Tahir or a Zühre. As well, it is not to shame them for love too. The whole thing is capability of being Tahir and Zühre, in short, in the heart. And he continued this slide. You love the world at a rattling pace, but it is not aware. You don't want to leave it, but it will leave you. This is also about this. Another poem about love. I want to die before you. Do you think that who passes later will find who's gone before? I don't think so. You had better have me burn and put me on the stove in your room in a jar. The jar shall be made of glass, transparent white glass, so that you can see me inside. Later, when you also die, you will come to my jar, and we will live there together, your ash in my ash.
Well, beautiful. Yeah, I think it's a very unique idea of love, which transcends from personal, from beloved to the mankind, the whole humankind living on the planet. Faiz Saab also, he was a very beautiful, he wrote beautiful poetry of his love and romance. And personally, if you ask me, I am more attracted to his romantic poetry than the other poetry. But at the same time, there's a poem which is called Two Loves, Do Ishq, one of his poem, in which he says that he talks about his love for his beloved and the love for country, and then at the end he says that both of them were incomplete, and I had to accept that. And but at the same time, I think one of his poem is Chaha hai isi rang mein lehlaye watan ko, and he talks about the country, the people, his homeland, and the dream he wants to come true, and then also about his beloved. And then one of his famous poem is Mujhse pehli si mohabbat mere mehboob na mang, in which first he talks about beauty of his beloved, and he thought that if he could have company of his beloved, he would think that he has got everything in the world. But then he says that there are other things in the life as well, there are other sorrows in the life as well, and there are other pleasure in the life as well, which attached him to the people of this universe, his country, who was struggling for a better future and who were having very miserable life at that moment. So that he at the end he says, Lord jati hai udhar ko bhi nazar kya kijiye, that I have to see that world as well. So I cannot spend all my time in my just personal love for my beloved. So it's a beautiful thing, beautiful poem, he said. Many people have objections on that poem as well, but sorry?
Yes. In this way, there is little bit difference between two poets. Because, for example, Ahmed Faiz first told about love, beloved, and after that he get regret. Then he say, no, and my other ideology is more important. My other problems and country problems is more important than beloved. But Nazım never say like this, because on Nazım, all topics parallel. Beloved, country, and ideology, three, goes parallel. And when you read his love poem, you say maybe he's the great, love poet. When you read his ideological poem, you say, oh, he's, so much passion for his ideology and communism or social justice like that. When you read about homeland, you say, oh, he's the great, lover of homeland. That's why for him, not one thing instead of that. All of them should be in life, and for all of that, space is different. And also he believes, with all of that, he can be happy, he can be full. Because also about life, for example, even he never was pessimistic. You cannot see any even single line pessimistic, because for him, living also is so much important, serious thing. And in spite of, he was in prison, for example, he was exiled, and but still, until end of his life, always he had so much hope and struggling. He never left, even when he got old. Even one of his poems, for example, he says on living, and you can see, how much he is full of passion for everything. Living is no joke. You must live with great seriousness. Like a squirrel, for example. I mean accepting nothing except and beyond living. I mean living must be your whole occupation. You must take living serious. I mean to such an extent that, for example, your arms are tied from your back. Your back is on the wall, or in laboratory with your white shirt, with your huge eyeglasses. You must be able to die for people, even for people you have never seen. For example, even in this poem, for him, living, struggling, love, all of that should be there.
Yeah, that's what I understand. The difference between the two poets here is that Nazim was perhaps bubbling with red hot passion for life, love, and revolution, and the way he lived. And Faiz Ahmed Faiz maybe having the same ideas, but he was calm. His poetry was smooth, and it was more on softer side of things than these. Very passionate. I mean, he was passionate, but his expression was kind of smooth and soft. So that is, we can discuss a lot more on this, but let's just turn to the techniques and style. I mean, let's come to their literary aspect more now. In Faiz Ahmed Faiz also broke away from tradition, though his poetry, his vocabulary, his metaphors, they are very much rooted into classical Urdu poetry. But at the same time, like many other poets of that time, he also brought in very new kind of structures. He wrote in free verse as well, and there are a lot, and he introduced quite a lot of new way of expressing emotions. So what about Nazim Hikmat? I think when he was growing up, it was Ottoman's time, and he did he write in the same tradition, or he broke away from that?
In this way also there is similarity between two poets. When Nazım started to write poems so early, 14 years old at that time, but at that time still Ottoman Empire was there. And he also got education, of course, Ottoman poetry, folk literature, for example. And also his grandfather already was coming from Mevlevi Dergah tradition. That's why he knew tradition style very well at that time. But after when he went to Soviet, and then he met with Mayakovsky, then he saw Russian poetry and other poetry in the world. Then he changed his style. On this way also, he's really, maybe we should say revolution. He did revolution in Turkish poetry. First time, for example, he wrote free line. Before that, there was tradition, aruz, meter, and rhyme, for example. There were also so many strict rules about poetry. All verse cannot be in poetry, all themes cannot be in poetry, for example. But Nazım, started to talk about so usual common people in poetry. It is, first time happened. For example, before, in Ottoman poetry, just, you can mention about prophet and about sultans, like, so, popular people you can mention. But Nazım talk about villager, for example, in his poetry, talk about factory workers. And he brought new themes as well, social realism, for example. Social realism also was first time mentioned by him. And he talked about justice, social problems in his poetry. And after him, social realism became trend in Turkish literature, in novel, in stories, in poetry. That was also because of Nazım. And another things, for example, he, got no futurist movement at that time. And also he, wrote about futurist style poems. That was also new in Turkish literature. And he actually tried to, combine tradition and modern style together, because for example, he wrote legend, but that legend is not classical legend style. For example, he talked about, again, as I said, common people there. He wrote Rubai. Rubai, is style of in Persian literature, that is genres. But he wrote in Rubai, but different style again. Whatever he wrote, always he tried to bring new things there. For example, he was painter as well, because his mother also was painter. On his poem, for example, he used cinematographic style as well. When you read his poems, like cinema description, like in cinema, you can, imagine that whatever he mentioned. So, such, thing, but also we should not say his poetry just propaganda. It is not like that. He believed always propaganda and aesthetic should be together. Whatever he mentioned, always he also was careful about aesthetic, also lyricism as well. That's why his arts, and also he didn't write just poem. He wrote also novel, story, theater as well. About all of that, he was so lyric, epic, and dramatic also.
So, how was his recognition in Turkey and around the world? Because Faiz is one of the best known poets of Pakistan in around the world. He has been widely translated. He was
Yes.
awarded Lenin Peace Prize from Moscow. And so, how about Nazim?
His poetries were translated into around 30, 40 languages in the world. And also, I want to say one of my memory, when I was in London, metro station, there is one maybe tradition. Every year they write some international and famous writer or poets lines on the metro station. And 2012 years, for example, was Nazım year in London, and his lines were written all London metro station at that time. That shows, how much he was also international poet. For example, when he was in prison and in Czech Republic, Yugoslavia at that time, Bulgaria, and India, Romania, Polonia, Hungary, and Lebanon, Egypt, even in Syria, there were so many protests, for supporting him against the Turkish government at that time, and so many famous writers, for example, Simone de Beauvoir and Albert Camus, Jean-Paul Sartre, Pablo Neruda, all of them, they did protest, for supporting him. Even in Turkey at that time, Orhan Veli, Melih Cevdet Anday, they are poets. They were young poets at that time. Also, they were influenced by Nazım Hikmet so much. They did hunger strike, and again for releasing Nazım from prison. This, how much affected. And also, when he was in prison, even he didn't stop. He was teacher also for young generation. He was in prison with some other Turkish writer, Orhan Kemal, Kemal Tahir, they were also, because of communist propaganda, were in prison. Orhan Kemal was writing poems at that time. Then he, advised him he should stop to write poem. And Nazım says, you don't have talent for poems. Stop this poem. You should write story. Then Orhan Kemal, after that, started to write story and novel. Now he's so famous writer about novel and write this. Another Turkish writer, for example, Sabahattin Ali, Nazım affected him so much. Or after him, for example, social realist writers, all of them follow Nazım's. They got all inspiration. They try to write like him. In the world, even when he died, for example, Pablo Neruda write one poem for him. Even he expressed his sadness about Nazım. Then he says, what will we do now without you, without your songs in the world? And he says, or for example, Aragon, and as I said, again mentioned about his friendship with Nazım. He says, for many years we were friends, and you were in prison, but now you died. What will I do? And my dear friend, he expressed, long his sadness. And now, for example, still Nazım, of course, in syllabus, in universities, in education system, there are so many cultural centers on his name. They organize so many programs and activities and projects about this, and he's still affect people, who writes poetry or novel. Ideological, he's still he is inspiration, and also as poet, also still his inspiration.
Great. And does it make you that such a great poet, such a great human being, and the Turkey government at that time revoked his citizenship, and
Yes.
now he has been accepted by society and state both, and people love him. Same was about Faiz Ahmed Faiz here. I mean, there were times when if he was invited at some function, there used to be protest against him by the rightist people. But now he has been, even his poetry is recited by those who did not like his ideas when he was alive. So, it's good to know that Nazim Hikmat is popular in the people as he was always before as well, but now probably state has also recognized him. What do you say?
Yes, yes. Now, again after his death, again he, government got him, back for Turkish citizenship. Now, also officially, also he is recognized as well, because even people who are doesn't accept his ideology, but they accept his talent as poet.
Okay. So, it's very interesting to discuss a few things about those very interesting times when Faiz and Nazim Hikmat lived here. Now, they are not, they both have died, but those are very interesting times when they had problems, they had sufferings, there were challenges, but they negotiated with them, they survived, they struggled, they created beautiful poetry. Now with I see literary scene here, I mean it's great poetry people are writing, but there are a lot of complaints about, I mean they might be lamenting about what's happening around, but their poetry does not carry that hope which Faiz Ahmed Faiz or Nazim Hikmat did carry in their poetry. That's my understanding, I can be totally wrong. There are great poets who are writing great poetry here. That's about different things. It doesn't carry hope. Is it the same thing in Turkey as well, in Turkish poetry scene? Or it's different?
Nowadays, Turkish poetry is more individual, not like before, talking about social problems or, new hopes or revolution, for example. Faiz Ahmed Faiz and Nazım Hikmet had dream of revolution. They really sincere from heart believe, and with revolution, then world can be changed. But now, time is so different, and modernism especially affected people so much. That's why now the more in Turkish poetry also, most of themes is individual personal problems, actually, like alienation, unhappiness, unpeace, or cannot be adapted to society, for example, not social, actually. I want to complete my speech with one memory of Nazım, if we have time. When Nazım was in prison, and then some people from Justice Ministry comes and visit him in prison. And then he behaved with Nazım so rude, and even he doesn't allow to Nazım sit, in on chairs. Then Nazım doesn't say anything. Then when Nazım leave room, then he come back. He's come back to that person comes from ministry. Then he says, "Do you know Ömer Hayyam?" And that person says, "Of course, I know Ömer Hayyam." Then Nazım says, "In future, whole world will know me, but nobody will know you, nobody will know your ministry name.
So thank you very much, Dr. Sibyl, for sharing your thoughts about Nazim Hikmet with us. It was wonderful talking about these two great poets, Nazim Hikmet and Faiz Ahmed Faiz. Thank you very much.
Welcome. It was a pleasure.
So viewers, thank you very much for watching us. See you next Sunday, same time.